Good morning. I'd like to call to order the October 30th, 2018 meeting of the Sacramento County Board of Supervisors. Madam Clerk, please take the roll.
Supervisor Cerna?
Here.
Kennedy?
Here.
Frost?
Here.
Natoli?
Here.
Peters?
Here.
And you have a quorum. This meeting of the Sacramento County Board of Supervisors is cablecast live on Metro Cable 14, the local government affairs channel on the Comcast, Consolidated Communications, and AT&T U-verse cable systems. The meeting is closed captioned and is webcast at sacmetrocable.tv. Today's meeting will be repeated Friday, November 2nd at 6 p.m. on Channel 14. A DVD copy is available for checkout from any local library branch. Members of the audience wishing to address the board may fill out a speaker slip and hand it to staff. When the chair calls your name, please come to the podium. Also, please silence your electronic devices at this time.
Thank you. Would everyone stand up and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Call your first item.
Okay. For your consent matters, items 1 through 41. For item 13, you are adopting an ordinance amending Title II, Chapter 2.78, Section 2.78.767 of the Sacramento County Code relating to parental leave. You waived reading on this on October 16th. For item 33, you are introducing an ordinance amending Chapter 3.50.140A1 and Chapter 3.50.140B1 of the Title III of the Sacramento County Water Agency Code to correct usage amounts required of residential customers billed on a bi-monthly cycle to qualify for the conservation discount. You waived reading. You are waiving reading on this, and you'll be adopting it on November 6th. That concludes my notes from the clerk.
Okay, thank you. Board members, any comments? Mr. Natoli?
Yes. Thank you, Madam Chair. If I could, I have a quick question on item number 9.
Item number 9, authorize Fifth Amendment to lease agreement for the District Attorney's Office at 906 G Street in the city of Sacramento, and the environmental document is exempt.
Just on a related item, this is upgrading some punch key, apparently security system for card key, but I'm curious about other improvements to the property there. We've had temporary fencing in place for months, and again, what consultation with your office is about if there are other improvements on that leased property as to where we are with that, Mr.
So not on 906G, not on the leased property, but on the other side, county-owned facility. Right, yeah. We are in discussions with the DA about the temporary fencing coming down and putting bollards. So we have some schematics that we're reviewing with her office, and that will be forthcoming.
Okay, so this is the property immediately across on the south side.
This is across the street.
Okay, very good. Thanks. The other item, if I could, would be item 23.
Item 23 is delegate authority to the Director of Animal Care and Regulation to enter into agreements for an on-call animal shelter veterinary relief services not to exceed $160,000 through December 31 of 2023.
Okay. Yep. Certainly in support of this item. I guess the question I wanted to raise on this one is that I know we have a current vacancy for one of the county veterinary positions. We've advertised for that. My understanding is we've been unsuccessful in garnering candidates even to consider for appointment to that vacancy. Obviously, these services are in addition to and are very critical. But what I wanted to put forward is that I know we've been working with personnel and human resources on this, but I think looking at the marketplace, the description in this staff report regarding on-call services and the challenge we've had even getting some of these contracts in place, and I'm pleased to see this item before us, is that I would ask maybe Mr. Gill and working with our human resources, if we need to look at the position and we look at obviously marketplace conditions and so forth, but if we're not having the ability to even get candidates to consider for that position, that vacancy hurts our overall wellness approach for animal care out there, and we can't be totally dependent upon on-call services. We have one of the 2 positions filled, and so I would guess ask that whatever we need to do to take a look at the classification of that position and what it pays, what sort of compensation, if that's the issue, because I think the longer we stay vacant in that position, it's going to hurt our ability to continue doing the good work we're doing out there. So I wanted to point that out.
Will do.
Okay, good. Thank you. Okay, that's all I had, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Frost? No. Mr. Cerna?
Comment on item 4.
Item 4, economic incentive agreement with U.S. Foods Incorporated for the development of a distribution facility at McClellan Park.
I just want to take the opportunity to publicly thank our Director of Economic Development, Troy Givens, who I see in the back of chambers, as well as Clark Witten, who I know also worked very hard on this incentive package. This package is one that I understand will help attract nearly 200 new jobs here in Sacramento County over the next 5 years, and it's that kind of dedicated partnership that through our economic development agency I think deserves to be recognized. So I wanted to make sure that I did so this morning. So thank you, Troy, and thanks to all your staff.
We here? Okay. I wanted to comment on item 5, if I could, Madam Clerk.
Item 5, authorize the support of the creation of the Sacramento Tourism Infrastructure District and recognize the City of Sacramento as lead agency of the Sacramento Tourism Infrastructure District.
Thank you. I had asked for extra time on this last time because I had not been informed that this was going on, and I'm going to vote for it, but I would like to ask Visit Sacramento to consider a formula that provides for a lower rate for the establishments on the outer limits of the proposed TID that don't get quite as much benefit from it. Mr. Antoli, you had one more item?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Madam Chair. I wanted to, on the proposed calendar, I think item 2 for Board of Supervisors meetings, I wanted to raise the a point that there are a couple of significant planning applications that I think are anticipated to come to our board next year, one being the New Bridge project, the other being Mather South. And I know that this calendar does not show any allotment of time for night meetings, but I'm going to suggest respectfully but very strongly that those projects have been in the works for many years and do have a significant interest on behalf of existing residents and maybe other property owners as well, but certainly residents in the Anatolia and in the Independence and Mather community. And it's difficult for folks, particularly folks that are working to get to our hearings, and those are going to have fairly lengthy presentations behind them. We've done some community outreach. I know I've been involved in community meetings recently. We'll continue to talk with community members. So I would ask again that we. Again, I don't know when we anticipate those getting to the board, but that we have the opportunity to at least reserve some time, because I know otherwise if we don't show a 6 o'clock or a 5 o'clock start on our calendar, then we fill up. That's just the way it is in the lives of supervisors. And so I would ask that we could work with planning department, and on those Wednesdays when you have those 2 o'clock starts, is that we look to having the opportunity, at least for the initial presentations on projects that in some cases have been in the works for 8, 9, 10 years, to have a full presentation and to have full participation by the communities that we represent. So I would ask that we consider that for some of those spring dates, if that's when we think those projects are coming through. So.
Mr. Kennedy will speak to that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I completely agree with Supervisor Natoli, and will be willing to work on calendar as needed. Okay. All right. I just thought if we didn't hold the time, though, that we'll book up those. So I don't know if we can work with your office. As soon as we get some dates. Okay. Thank you. Very good. Thanks. That's fine.
Okay. Is that everything on consent? To entertain a motion. Oh,
Consent.
Second.
Please vote.
Unanimous vote. Item 42,
Just very quickly, there's one introduction that I wanted
I'm sorry. Marie Wooden is our new environmental management director. Is she here today?
Yes, she's right there.
Would you like to say a few words? Sorry, Marie, I got distracted.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to thank you, the board members, County Executive Nav Gill, Executive Assistant Nancy Newton, Deputy Executive Bruce Wagstaff for considering and selecting me as the Director for the Environmental Management Department. I have worked for this department for the past 30 years, and it is an honor to be selected to serve in the capacity of Director, not only for the staff at the department, but also for our community, and carrying out our mission, which is to protect public health and the environment. Again, it is a great honor, and I thank each of you with much gratitude. Thank you.
Thank you. Congratulations on your appointment.
Okay, item 42, presentation of resolution honoring Dean Blank on the occasion of his retirement.
Madam Chair, I was going to request dropping this item.
You beat me to it. Mr. Schuman? Oh, Dean, you have to go all the way up to the front so you can be humiliated.
Well, good morning, Chair Peters, members of the board. I'm Dan Schuman with the Department of Transportation, and it is my pleasure to be here this morning to help you honor Dean Blank on the occasion of his retirement. Dean has served with Sacramento County for more than 29 years, most of it, thankfully, with the Department of Transportation, and to try to go through a career like Dean's in less than the entire morning session. I'll just kind of summarize what's written on the resolution here, which is adequate. So Dean began his career with Sacramento County in June of 1989, starting as an assistant engineer. He joined the Department of Transportation about a year and a half later in December 1990 in our transportation planning group, and then eventually joined the design group as an assistant. Dean was promoted to associate civil engineer in 1994, and then to senior civil engineer in 2000. And then in 2005, Dean was appointed as the principal civil engineer and has been managing the Department of Transportation's Transportation Planning and Development Services section since then. Dean has performed and managed design of major capital improvement projects, including the Watt Avenue Bridge over the American River and the dedicated transit lane on the Watt Avenue US 50 interchange, just to name a few. And he has helped to successfully deliver transportation projects to construction while reducing impacts on neighboring properties, preserving and enhancing the environment, and reducing project costs. Dean has managed the development of some of the most significant transportation plans in Sacramento County, again, to name a few, including the transportation element of the county general plan, the South Watt Area Transportation Study, the East Sacramento Region Aggregate Mining Truck Management Plan, and then most recently the Jackson Corridor Transportation Studies. In leading these efforts, Dean has applied his skills and his innovation to ensure that the planned transportation infrastructure and services can be delivered efficiently and best serve the mobility needs of Sacramento County's residents and businesses. Through his career, Dean has represented Sacramento County in numerous collaborations throughout this region, including the Metropolitan Transportation Plan, the Capital Southeast Connector Project, as well as ongoing collaborations and partnerships with our neighboring cities, counties, the state, and also the regional agencies, as well as making countless presentations before CPACs, before the Planning Commission and your board. And finally, Dean has helped to advance Sacramento County's goals to better serve active modes of transportation, including walking and bicycling, and is the one that is credited with creating, he's the father of the Great Scott Road Walk and Bike event. It's just served its 8th year, and it's continuing to grow in popularity and participation. And yes, this was Dean's idea, and he has been a big part of it ever since. So we have a lot of work to do to get ready for next year's. So now Dean, in his retirement, is free to do more scuba diving, more motorcycle riding, skiing and backpacking, traveling the world, and I understand there's going to be a trip to Southeast Asia in December to start all of that off, and just enjoy life. And then I'm going to go ahead and read the conclusion of the resolution. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Supervisors, County of Sacramento, State of California, does hereby honor Dean Blank upon the occasion of his retirement and extends its sincere appreciations for his many dedicated years of service and wishes him a happy and healthy retirement in the years ahead. Congratulations, Dean.
Thank you.
And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Stop smiling so big, Dean. Would you like to say a few words?
Just a few. I'm not used to the spotlight.
Yeah.
This is not a comfortable position for me, but for my last speak before the board, I just want to say thank you. I've enjoyed my career with Sacramento County. I've always tried to make a difference, and I appreciate the opportunity to serve the county, your board, and the public of Sacramento County. So I leave the Department of Transportation in good hands. They've got some great staff there, and I'll miss all my friends here at the county, but I've got some big adventures I plan on doing, so I look forward to enjoying those.
Congratulations to you. And I just want to say you worked on a lot of major issues of interest to everyone on the board, and particularly for me, I liked having you come to the community meetings that we have in the unincorporated area where the public can attend and find out what's going on and get straight answers and get their concerns taken care of. And you've always done a great job at that too. That's equally important to working on the big items. So
Right.
I wish you well while you're riding that bike, and stay safe in that. We don't want to hear about you bouncing around. So send a postcard now and then.
Yeah. Thank you, Madam Chair. It's been my honor.
Mr. Natoli, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I would certainly echo your comments, Madam Chair, but also just to say to Dean, I've appreciated the opportunity to work with you on many of the projects that certainly Dan has outlined in your work with the county, and some of those weren't just one meeting or two meetings, they were years long. The Watt Avenue Bridge, certainly the work on a number of the other large infrastructure projects. But one, it may have been noted, but I know that just an earlier reference talking about some items we may hear from a planning perspective the early part of next year. You worked pretty extensively with the advisory group out of the Mather complex, and with that, I know you've now earned a title on a road that has a curve in it to avoid the I guess it's the Dean Blank curve, which avoided some very important natural resources, vernal pools, and incorporate those into preserve, but also met the, I think, requirements for traffic, safety and movement of vehicles at certain speeds and so forth, and I think satisfied a number of different concerns. And so I want to note that, but certainly I've appreciated, as Susan said, your attendance at community meetings, and oftentimes I was there, but oftentimes not, and I know that it was with a great deal of confidence that your directors and others had you there, recognizing that you're a good listener and you come with some creative ideas and approaches, but always with the intent to protect the public safety with regards to transportation and completing the whole network of roads, but mobility in this community. So I want to thank you, Dean, and I know you shared with me a few weeks ago when we talked that you were not just contemplating retirement, you already set a date, so here it is, and with that I want to wish you well, and thank you for your service and for your work on behalf of the county and the citizens of this county. You did a great job. Thanks.
Great, thank you. I was used to designing roads that were straight. This was a challenge for me because it was not straight, it was quite curvy.
Well, you got another chapter in the engineering book now. You can actually make it a road that functions, that can have a curve in it, right? So without being straight. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good luck to you.
Thank you.
I just wanted to mention, if Doug Warren is still here, I didn't get your request to speak until after we'd already voted on the consent calendar, but since you were in support of item 5, I assume you'll be happy with the vote. Next item, please.
Item 43, presentation of resolution recognizing October as Manufacturing Awareness and Appreciation Month.
Okay, could I ask Christine Lasser, the HR manager with Siemens Mobility, and Tim Schaefer, West Coast Regional Sales Manager, Sarah Tizet, formerly Promax Tools, to come to the podium. Hello. Thanks for coming today. Thank you so much. I'm going to say a few words and then give you a chance. All right. Okay. October 2018, Manufacturing Day, is celebrated nationally on the first Friday of the month of October to showcase their facilities in an effort to educate the community about manufacturing career opportunities. Manufacturers provide over 35,000 jobs for the Sacramento region and over 12 million jobs nationally. Manufacturing is an important industry in the United States, contributing nearly $2.2 trillion to our economy, and for every dollar spent, another $1.89 is added to the economy. And for every manufacturing worker hired, there are 4 other employees hired in an adjacent market. The average manufacturing worker in the United States earns over $80,000 a year, including pay and benefits. And over the next decade, nearly 3.5 million manufacturing jobs will likely be needed, and 2 million are expected to go unfilled due to the skills gap. So that's an area kids in school can focus on. Increasing the exposure of manufacturing career is needed to bridge the gap in the skilled labor shortage. So Sacramento County appreciates all our manufacturers and commend them for their commitment to the betterment of the region. And the Board of Supervisors in Sacramento County does recognize October 2018 as Manufacturing Awareness and Appreciation Month in the County of Sacramento, California. And I have a resolution to that effect that I will give to you.
Great.
And I don't know if you have someone taking pictures. Come in this way. That one of you or both of you have something you want to say?
Go right ahead.
All right, great. Well, greetings, everyone, and thank you for this opportunity to speak in front of the members of Sac City Council.
This is the Board of
Board of Supervisors.
I'm sorry, Board of Supervisors, I apologize.
We don't want the pay cut.
Okay. On behalf...
resolution.
Yeah, really. On behalf of Kevin McGrew, who is the director of our quality group at Siemens, and he's the president of SVMI, Sacramento Valley Manufacturers Initiative. I wanted to tell you a little bit about what we do. We partner with educators, manufacturers in the Sacramento area, where we're bringing new hires, people to skill up in their current jobs in manufacturing. We realized years ago that there's a gap in manufacturing. We've been working with all of the colleges, the local colleges in the area, to create capstone classes to, again, upskill in welding, CNC machinist. We're for the manufacturers within the county, and the work that we're doing is just phenomenal, bringing all the groups together. So I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that.
So I represent a very good Madam Chair. I don't know where you went, but you did a great job pronouncing the name. Lots of people struggle with that. It is Saratizit. It's a Luxembourg-based company that is, we employ about 16,000 people worldwide. We're lucky, fortunate and a half, this particular company that I work for was founded in Citrus Heights in 1967 and was acquired by Saratizit in 2014. And the company is growing. We're hiring more and more people. And like Christine said here, the skills gap is a huge problem. I'm delighted to announce we had our first session of training for our new CNC machinist training that's being held at Sierra College, but not through Sierra College. It's all sponsored by SVMI employers. So each employer is committed to spending, it's about $2,000 in tuition. That is tuition free for the students.
Wow.
But it is paid for by the employers that would be hiring those after the session is over. So it's about 80 hours of training that they'll go through, and that'll be the first step in their apprenticeship program. So very much thank you for the resolution and helping us increase awareness for manufacturing and the need for manufacturing jobs here. So thank you so much.
Thank you for pointing out all that job availability nationwide. That's something we don't hear very often. And
we're selling everything we're making right now. It is a great place to be, but it is our limit is going to be how many people we can hire and how much we can grow. That's really that's our limitation right now, because the manufacturing industry, and I cover 5 states, so I cover California, Oregon, Washington, Idaho, and Nevada. And every market that I call on, I have fortunate that I have 2 of the biggest markets in the United States. One is the Los Angeles market, and one is in the Seattle market, 2 largest, and everybody is screaming they can't find people. So it is a serious problem. Unfortunately, we're addressing it a little bit on the late side. It would have been nice if we'd addressed this 10 years ago, but now at least we're moving forward now. So again, thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
I would just say,
Foley?
on manufacturing, I had a chance to visit Sarah Tizet and with a group of other folks from Rancho Cordova and some other elected officials, and it was amazing to see, and I know obviously with Siemens as well, but what we're turning out in this community, and obviously with the labor shortage, that certainly is a challenge for us, but to see the lines operating and to recognize those products that we made right here in the Sacramento region in our communities with some certainly homegrown but also internationally renowned firms was really amazing. And again, the jobs are well paying, the environments are clean, and it's just a real opportunity for folks to to grasp onto something and have a certainly a sustainable income, but also to live in our region and to produce things that are consumed and used worldwide. So it was fascinating. I thank you for the visit the day I was there.
Very much for coming, Supervisor Tolley. It is that's our we sought to show that how clean manufacturing can be. We're a very low impact, very clean operation there.
Very good. Thanks.
One more comment, if you wait just a minute. Mr. Cerna?
Yeah, I just wanted to add my comments as well, and certainly thanks and appreciation and acknowledgement for this resolution. I had a chance about 3 weeks ago, I guess it was, to tour the Siemens manufacturing plant in South Sacramento County for the first time, and I was really taken aback by the breadth of skill sets that are applied there to produce light rail and locomotive units, and the technology that's being deployed there is really quite amazing. And having just come from a multi-day whirlwind tour of Germany to see what they're doing there in the electric propulsion space, I was really enthused and delighted to see that we have that going on right here in our backyard, and the number of jobs that are being produced out there is really phenomenal. So I just wanted to make mention of that, as well as what Supervisor Natoli just mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item, please.
Item 44, presentation of resolution honoring the Sacramento Mandarins upon the occasion of qualifying for the top 10 drum and bugle corps in the world.
Supervisor Kennedy.
Where's the drum roll?
Yeah, I thought I was getting a band here.
Poorly planned, I apologize.
Come on down, Mr. Yee, welcome.
Let me your face. We're not here to talk about bingo. It's actually quite an honor to have these gentlemen here today. Flo took my thunder away with the title, the top 10 in the world.
Wow.
So I'm going to read a few of the whereases. Whereas the Mandarins was founded as a Chinese-only organization during a period of racial tension in the world, today the Mandarins is a diverse and inclusive organization welcoming youth of all ethnic, socioeconomic, gender, and sexual orientation backgrounds. And whereas the Mandarin Drum and Bugle Corps just received its greatest accomplishment, qualifying for Drum Corps International Finalist Competition and scoring in the top 10 Drum and Bugle Corps in the world. I'll say it again. And whereas the Mandarins provides a growing Mandarins Music Academy that provides music education at elementary schools throughout the Sacramento region, now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Supervisors, County of Sacramento, State of California, does hereby honor the Sacramento Mandarins for its service and honor to the community of Sacramento and the State of California, passed and adopted October 30th, 2018. Congratulations on a tremendous accomplishment.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, first of all, for this resolution. It was a surprise to receive this, but it was actually 55 years as what we consider to be kind of a teenager as an organization. We are so proud to have been able to represent the Sacramento region. This past summer, we traveled 12,000 miles across the country. We traveled to 25 different states. competing in about 20 of those states. We represent the Sacramento region. These are in some of the largest stadiums in the country, in St. Louis, in San Antonio, and Atlanta, in the Mercedes-Benz Dome. But really, the pinnacle of our achievement was being at Lucas Oil Stadium in Indianapolis, where the Colts play, and having the announcer saying, for the first time in their 55-year history, achieving finals performance from Sacramento, California, the Mandarins. Right? And so to be able to represent the region across the country to hundreds of thousands of fans out there, and also to be able to come back home and give back to local elementary school students, to us is the biggest honor. When we started, back in the 60s and 70s, the Mandarins was serving about 60 students. Okay, that was about it. This year in 2018, our number is going to be over 1,000 students that we serve. And so not only are we achieving a higher level in terms of our performance level, but the breadth and who we're serving is just has grown exponentially. So with that, I want to thank the Sacramento County for all of your support for our organization, and we hope to do extremely great things in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Before you leave, Mr. Cerna would like to make a comment.
Yeah, I just wanted to certainly offer my congratulations, and it's good to see you, Jimmy. As someone that had the opportunity to participate in the McClatchy Lions marching band back in the early 80s, and having then seen the caliber of the Mandarins' musicianship, which has only gotten more superior over the years, I just wanted to make mention of the fact that this is not an easy thing to do, to run a drum and bugle corps. We, as spectators and those that appreciate music and performances, I think take for granted what really goes on behind the scenes. So I just wanted to thank the entire administration of the Mandarins, and this is a very, very well-deserved recognition. So congratulations, and look forward to more years, more decades of the kind of charity and performance that you give this community.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Next item, please.
Item 45, presentation of resolution recognizing Real Men Wear Pink, Sacramento campaign to fight breast cancer.
Supervisor Cerna.
Madam Chair and colleagues, it is my distinct pleasure this morning to offer this resolution recognizing Real Men Wear Pink, Sacramento campaign to fight breast cancer. First of all, I have to apologize. I'm not wearing pink, but there's a very good reason. And the reason is I've been wearing so much pink lately, all my pink's at the dry cleaners. I've actually had the good fortune to participate directly under the direction and supervision of Chris Warden, who you're going to hear from here in a minute, over the last several weeks to raise awareness and also, equally important, raise scarce resources to fight and battle breast cancer here locally and nationwide. And with regards to that, I just want to make mention of the fact that some folks may not know, but 250,000 American women will be diagnosed with breast cancer just this year. We are fortunate to have the resources of the American Cancer Society that is currently investing $62 million to fight breast cancer. And on a very, very personal note, the reason it was a no-brainer for me to say yes to Chris to join with a number of other local celebrities and political figures to raise money, raise awareness over the last several weeks is because of the unfortunate circumstances in my own family. My late mother passed, my stepmother passed from breast cancer, my grandmother passed from breast cancer, and my aunt passed from breast cancer, and my father passed from renal carcinoma. So this is something that is very personal to me. I will look forward to being enlisted in future campaigns, and I wanted to make sure that this Board of Supervisors certainly recognized the tremendous effort, again, under the incredible leadership of Chris Warden over the past several weeks to bring acknowledgement, recognition, and most importantly, resources to fight breast cancer. And with that, I'm going to offer this resolution recognizing Real Men Wear Pink Sacramento campaign to fight breast cancer. And I'm going to offer it to Chris Warden and give him an opportunity to say a few words, and we'll take some photos. Chris, this one.
Thank you, board members. I want to let you know, and Supervisor Cerna, how much we appreciate this. It's quite an honor. I wanted to personally thank Supervisor Cerna for his engagement. He's been gracious with his time. He's helped us raise money. He laid down a wicked baseline in a cameo on a video that has, as of this morning, gotten 67,000 Facebook views. If you haven't seen this, I recommend everybody go to Facebook, RMWP SAC, to check it out and share it with your friends and family. We do this because we want to show the women in our life that we are with them step by step. This is the best testament I think that we can give to those that we've lost and to those that we love. So I'm hopeful that this will continue to grow, that we'll have many more ambassadors probably in these chambers, in fact, who can assist us in this effort next year. And I wanted to also say that anytime you have a passion project, there are people in your lives who kind of move to the background, even temporarily. So all of the Real Men Wear Pink ambassadors want to thank their partners. I want to thank my partner, Eric Emanuel, who's been instrumental in everything that I've done in this. And then I think the most important thing is to let you all know that as a chapter, we compete nationally against chapters all across the country. And our deadline isn't until midnight tomorrow. So you can go to realmenwearpinksac.com, pick Supervisor Cerna or another ambassador and contribute. We do this for the day when we don't have to worry about breast cancer diagnosis, but I would be lying if I told you that I do not want to have us lose to Cleveland. So please, please give. So, and thank you again, Phil. And Sonia, I forgot to mention, the American Cancer Society, Sonia Silva, their community engagement manager, has been amazing in helping us flourish in this effort. Their team is incredible. So I look forward to having more ambassadors next year and hopefully being back in this space.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Next item.
Item 46 is the presentation of resolution recognizing the 2018 California State Association of Counties Challenge Award.
Lisi and Graham. Welcome to our board chambers. First time we've seen you since you're the new boss over at CSAC.
Yes, thank you very much, Chairwoman Peters. And members of the board. I'm Graham Canals. I'm the executive director of the California State Association of Counties. I'm based right here in Sacramento, so great to be here local. Really appreciate the opportunity to join you all today, really to continue to celebrate innovation. You've already done some of that today, certainly with your transportation department and others. I'm joined by Stanisha Boatner, who's our Administration of Justice analyst, one of the stellar staff that we have at CSAC that represents you each and every day. It's truly been a challenging year in California, a very successful one for CSAC amidst what's really a changing political landscape. I wanted to communicate to this board that our legislative team continues to fight to protect counties here in Sacramento and also in DC. And there are a couple of things that are really important that have been accomplished over this past year that I'd like to pass on to this board. The first is that amidst all the changing impacts related to wildfire and disasters, CSAC led development of what was a $1 billion investment to prevent fires, wildfire prevention package that was signed by the governor. But we also, near and dear to a lot of us in communities all across the state, is we were successful in getting $700 million in historic investment to fight homelessness in every community of the state. So precious dollars to go to each community in the state, in addition to nearly $300 million for repayment of prior mandates, which bring critical resources back to your general fund to support your local priorities. So CSAC is fortunate to serve as your advocate in Sacramento and in DC. We also operate the California Counties Foundation, which has the education side of our house. That includes our CSAC Institute, whose main campus is right here in Sacramento, and we're in 4 other locations in the state. But we also look each year for the great innovation that's occurring all across California counties. And Sacramento is certainly no stranger to that. You've received recognition for innovation by us in a number of prior years. So this morning, I'm really honored to be here to recognize the great innovation here in Sacramento County. We had 267 entries into our Challenge Award program this year, and out of that, there were 17 programs that rose to our highest level relative to earning a Challenge Award, including the one here in Sacramento County. That is out of your probation department, your youth detention facilities, multi-sensory de-escalation room. Try to say that 3 times fast. What it really is this is about criminal justice and partnering with your community to improve outcomes. It's an innovative practice that creates an environment for residents to de-escalate without the use of force, without being put into an isolation room. And this, in turn, prevents violence and increases safety. The room, the de-escalation room, provides a non-threatening space that's designed for supportive engagement and non-adversarial interaction between residents and staff. It's painted with murals and stocked with a variety of mechanisms designed to engage all of the senses. The de-escalation room is used to help residents develop self-regulation skills to safely regain control, which is really critical in terms of transitioning back into the community. Studies show that a resident's ability to use available resources in the environment to calm emotions with staff engagement is a critical step in the process of self-regulation. Residents see the room as a resource. It's not a punitive action. So it's really served as a great positive place for folks to make progress and move forward. Sacramento County's youth detention facility is the first in the United States to open a multi-sensory de-escalation room as an alternative to isolation for detained youth. So you are breaking ground across the country on this effort. The benefits of the de-escalation room were immediately obvious. In the first 6 months of operation, use of force incidents decreased by more than 50% over the previous year. Furthermore, youths are learning how to self-regulate, a real soft skill that will benefit them once they're back into the community and moving on as adults. As a resident told one of my staff on a recent tour, if he had the skills he is learning now when he was younger, he might not even be in the detention facility. This is a really great program. And as we well know at CSAC, innovation begins with strong leadership and creating a culture of excellence. And that's exactly what this board has done, your CEO and departments. And so we're very proud to present Sacramento County with the 2018 CSAC Challenge Award. This marks the 3rd time in 5 years that we have honored your Sacramento County Probation Department. It's certainly a leader in this state with the Challenge Award. And so congratulations go to this Sacramento County Board of Supervisors, as well as Chief Probation Officer Lee Seal, Chief Deputy Dave Simone, and Assistant Chief Probation Officer Marlon Yarber. So please join me in congratulating them. We have beautiful hardware. Chief Seal. Great. Awesome.
Good morning, Board of Supervisors. Lee Seal here on behalf of the Probation Department. It's certainly our thanks to the State Association of Counties for their recognition of the Sacramento County. This Challenge Award really reflects the commitment of this Board of Supervisors, our county executive, and the women and men of the Probation Department to invest in and work towards trauma-informed approaches to juvenile justice that help build up our young people. I want to thank this board for your support and your investment in this work. You've shown that we can reduce juvenile crime, save money, and reduce the number of youth who are incarcerated by investing in strategies that support youth and their families. And we in the Probation Department are committed to continuing in this work. This particular idea reflects the premise that we should be creating spaces inside our facility for young people to express themselves and engage with staff when they're angry or upset. That we can better understand and serve these youth if we take a restorative approach and understand their trauma. That the job of staff is to talk with youth and engage with them. That we want to avoid letting their anger and frustration turn into confrontations with staff and escalation. And the multisensory de-escalation rooms are places for these conversations to happen. This project has been successful. As Graham said, we've reduced our uses of force and we've limited room confinement in our facility. Other juvenile halls across the state and nation are replicating this work. But more than anything, this reflects our vision, which is to treat the residents inside our juvenile hall as we would treat our own children, because in fact, they are our own children. We're a community, and we must work together on behalf of our youth. Finally, I want to commend the staff inside Juvenile Hall for their professionalism. It's really their work that we're honoring today, their talents in leading the way forward. So again, I thank the board for your work and support and vision in helping make this happen and all the good work going on inside our Juvenile Hall. Finally, to the California State Association of Counties for promoting and helping us to advance our vision throughout the county. Thank you very much.
Hold on just a second, Lee. Mr. Cerna?
Thank you. Just wanted to say a few words about, yet again, the fantastic job that our probation department is doing on so many different fronts. But on this one in particular, I think Graham said it best in his introduction about some of the testimony that you're hearing from those that are incarcerated in our youth detention facility that have had the benefit of being exposed to the multi-sensory de-escalation program at the YDF. When they say that they have a chance to finally kind of stabilize and self-reflect on what behavior they engaged in to put them in that position in the first place, I think is probably the best outcome we could ask for. Yeah. And you know, giving them that time and that space, literally, to self-reflect and understand how not to repeat in terms of their offenses, I think that is the whole mission of what we're trying to do, what you're trying to do, what your staff is attempting to achieve for this county. And I would only suggest, in addition to my congratulations, is that somehow, you know, in a methodical way, perhaps through your own association, Chief, we spread this word and this achievement far and wide to other probation departments that don't yet have this type of programming in their respective juvenile halls and youth detention facilities, so that more Californian youth can enjoy the benefit of this.
Thank you. We'd be honored to take part in that. And finally, I just want to reiterate again, this really is not the work of a department working in isolation. This is something that we do with your leadership, support, investment, and we can't thank this board, all 5 members of you, enough for that. So thank you again.
Thanks again.
Thank you. Next item, please.
Item 47 is approve changes to the scope of services of the Inspector General's contract.
Members of the board, what we have in front of you today is revisions to the scope of service for the OIG. Just as a background, we've been to you twice now on September 11th, and then we came back in October. Basically, the feedback that we got from the board last time, there was 2 components that were of concern for the board members, and one of them was independent review of work. So the material that you have in front of you, in the preamble the board had asked for, we do emphasize that the Inspector General works independently on the items detailed in the scope of service. That theme is carried on in the scope of service. It also says that it will independently review departmental policies and procedure, department here being the Sheriff's Department. We also added another component, merged some language, which is item number D. We did not have this in the previous iteration that you saw, and the language is it makes independent determination regarding Sheriff's Department investigation for sufficiency and completeness, and also allows the OIG to also do consultation with the Sheriff Department, County Council, District Attorney, or the Coroner as that individual sees fit. So in the document, what we are presenting to you does have that independent component that we got feedback, so that's in there. The second piece that we had some discussion about was the role of the Board of Supervisors. In this document, in the preamble, and Article 1 states up front that the board can direct work to the OIG is through the county exec, and the rationale behind that, as we had discussed previously, is that want to have the ability to get comments from all board members in an efficient manner, be able to pass that on to the OIG, pass it on to the sheriff. So this revision does guarantee that. Even though the administrator for this contract is a county exec, it does not mean that any board member does not have access to the OIG. If the OIG wants to come meet with you, which requires the scope of service, absolutely, that's within their prerogative. But it's more of catching the work, making sure that everybody knows what is that we're asking for the OIG to do. So those are 2 major components that I wanted to spotlight. Our sheriff is here too to speak on it. So if not any questions, Madam Chair, I don't know if...
No? Mr. Kennedy?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Nav. So the last time we met, I have to tell you, and I said I used the words watered down and some other adjectives. And one of my concerns, many of my concerns were outlined in the county exec's statement just now, but just to put a finer point on it, last time a big concern was the lack, in my opinion, of independence in the way that the job description was written, or scope of work was written. I see that now, and I may get my numbers a little wrong, just a quick count. It's been mentioned 5 times in this document. So I think it's clear that this is, the intent of this is to have independent review. Another was the word investigate was, in my mind, glossed over for other words like monitoring and things like auditing and things like that. Investigate is now mentioned 10 times in this document. The role, as the county exec said, of the Board of Supervisors was, in my mind, not even present. The only thing that it mentioned the Board of Supervisors' role 1 time, and it was just to accept an annual report. It's now mentioned 5 times as to what the role of the board will be, and with greater clarification. There's significant emphasis on citizen complaints in this document, so this is not something that will be driven simply by the board or the county exec or even the sheriff, but also have a citizen complaint component in there. And it allows full access to complete the work of the OIG, including the critical incident call-out roster, which is vitally important to an independent investigation should there be an incident that needs to be investigated. So is it the most perfect document in the world? But we don't live in a perfect world. I do think that this goes a lot further to creating what the original intent of the Office of Inspector General is. Madam Chair, if you could indulge me, I would like to ask the sheriff to come forward, if that would be okay.
Be happy to. Sheriff Jones?
Sir.
Hello, Sheriff. Thank you.
Good morning. First of all, I'd like to completely support the notion that real men wear pink. So, thank you.
Thank you for wearing pink. I do appreciate it. And we never questioned your manliness, by the way. So, Sheriff, we've gone back and forth over the weeks on this thing, and you've heard my comments I just made. You've heard the county execs. I have one basic premise and question. In order for this community to heal, in order for us to have faith in our county, and everybody up here, as well as yourself, as representatives of the county, I'm going to ask you one question, and that's, would you be willing, based upon the parameters here, to support bringing specifically Rick Brazil back as the OIG and allowing access for investigations as outlined in the scope of work?
Well, I think before I give my response to that, I'd like to make just a general comment upon the language of this particular contract, if I can be so
We
indulged.
often hear long responses to short questions, so
I'll try and make it concise. As you know, I've been working with the county executive for some time, so many weeks, regarding the language, as he's reflected some of the concerns that the board has had. We're trying to get to a point where it is a proper balance between independence and autonomy on the one hand, and that's independence and autonomy from everyone, all of us, including the media, and then protecting the county and preserving the integrity of investigations and prosecutions on the other hand. And I think that for any effective Inspector General model, that balance must be struck, and I think the language here adequately strikes that balance. I don't think it goes too far for either the board or for the Sheriff's Department, but I think rather it strikes that balance. So I do support the language in this contract, with one minor caveat and one potential suggestion for modification, which I can get back to in a moment. But in response to your question, I actually have been giving that very question considerable thought, and I actually appreciate you asking it. As I've stated from the beginning, I have always valued and appreciated not just the personal relationship I've had with Rick that goes back many years, but the insight he's lent to us historically as the Inspector General. This current incident notwithstanding, he has always lent his considerable experience and context to make the Sheriff's Department better, in all candor. And while I still stand by my assessment and my actions in this particular instance, I do realize that I think a lot of it, maybe all of it, could have been avoided if there were better language when the original contract was conceived. Frankly, I think the loose language that the contract was originally written in over time allowed differing expectations of the Inspector General's responsibilities, his powers, and his limitation by various parties, maybe including the Inspector General himself. And so I think that a future recurrence would be obviated by incorporating this language. So in direct response now to your question, I would wholeheartedly support bringing back Rick Brazil as the Inspector General with this language, and of course assuming that we can incorporate as an addendum to his extension. I would wholeheartedly support the county renewing his contract for that one-year extension allowed under the contract with this language in place. Of course, that would depend on whether Rick was willing, but I would be more than happy to reach out to him this afternoon to talk about a path forward if that is the collective board's will.
Thank you for your direct response.
Just want to interject a little bit. If that's what the board's bill is, and Scott's, as he indicated, I will help convene that meeting to make sure that I get everybody in the room at that point.
Thank you. No more questions.
Thank you. Does that complete your remarks?
Well, there was the one point about the potential for modification, and it is in section Roman 2, section B, A. And that section, as you're going towards it, outlines the role of the district attorney in determining the lawfulness of officer-involved shootings, but it was also intended to permit the Inspector General to make independent recommendations, notwithstanding the conclusions made by anyone else. So my concern is surrounding the use of the word shall versus may. Using the word shall creates kind of an artificial reporting mandate for the Inspector General in such a case, rather than allowing it within the independent discretion that we want the Inspector General to have to come up with recommendations. I mean, frankly, I would always expect the Inspector General to come up with recommendations in an officer-involved shooting, but I think creating an artificial mandate to do so really takes away from the discretion. The end result is still the same. He's able to, but I think the may puts it within the province of his or her independent discretion to do so. And so I would recommend that that word shall be changed to may, just to allow it to be within the province and discretion and independence of the Inspector General. That would be my only recommendation.
Could I ask a clarification?
So if that covers all your remarks?
It does.
Yeah, okay.
But I'm happy to answer any questions.
Sure. I have a couple supervisors like to speak. Mr. Natoli?
Yeah, just on that point, Sheriff Jones, so there's two shalls in that sub B. There's one, actually in sub capital B, there's contractor shall monitor investigations regarding officer-involved shootings where a subject is struck, significant use of force incidents, and in-custody deaths. And then the sub A underneath that, lowercase, says shall make independent recommendations. Are you suggesting you take shall out in both cases?
No, I'm suggesting that we leave the shall in. I mean, I didn't overtly say that, but it would be my preference that we leave the shall in there. Those are the big three that I actually want the Inspector General to put.
Oh, so you're suggesting leave shall in, yeah.
The shall out of the sub A section, to leave it within the discretion of the Inspector General, rather than creating some sort of false artificial mandate.
Okay. All right, thanks for that clarification. I wanted to ask, and certainly while the sheriff's there, but also the county executive, one of the things that, and again, I would concur with a number of the observations that my colleague Mr. Kennedy has made relative to, I think, the work that's been done over the past couple of weeks as it relates to making sure that independence is clear, and that certainly the clarification as it relates to some of the duties and responsibilities, again, I think recognizing within the scope of services contract. One of the things that, and I know you mentioned it, Nav, in your report, was, certainly was suggested, and you've put in a preamble that I think generally, talks to obviously what the intent is here. But one of the things that I drew myself back to in looking at the information from 2015, both in the discussion paper and the board report, but also then it's been incorporated into the annual reports from the OIG. And it was, again, a statement that I think it's somewhat captured in the preamble, but I guess I would like reaction, and maybe something that can be worked on further. But I'm just going to quote a couple sentences here from the board report, November 17th of 2015, but also it's included in, as I said, in the annual reports. It talks about the Inspector General, and it says, has broad oversight powers that include evaluation of the overall quality of law enforcement, custodial, and security services, and the authority to encourage systemic change. In addition, the Inspector General will specifically track and monitor high-profile cases. Obviously, it goes to some of the sub here, or serious complaint cases to conclusion, review, review complete investigations, and advise the sheriff of any investigations which appear incomplete or otherwise deficient. Good portion of that is covered in the scope of services. Just let me finish. And then in the 2017 or 2016 annual report, quoting from page 4, it says, and again, this is the Inspector General says, the Office of Inspector General has broad oversight powers that include the evaluation of the overall quality of law enforcement, repeating myself, but custodial and security services, the authority to encourage systemic change, and then this is an addition, and provides, quote, in quotes, monitor style, end of quote, oversight of the Sacramento County Sheriff's Department, and then the duties are outlined, much as they are in the scope of services in that contract, but also in this one. So I guess I'd like to have a reaction to that, because my view is that when you're talking about a preamble, and if those things are accurate and reflective in this contract, I think that those are important statements, because I know that there's the absence of the word here of oversight, and that may be a trigger word as it relates to people's reaction, but I think it was certainly the intent. Obviously, the scope of services bears out what the actual role and certainly the responsibilities and the parameters for the monitoring style. And so, again, I guess I would just draw attention and not asking to necessarily react immediately to this, but to me, those were important things, and they're not all encompassed in the preamble. Some are encompassed, obviously, in the tracking and the scope of services. But I think there's a very important statement in that. It was in the staff report that was, it came to us from the county executive at the time, and also, obviously, in the OIG's report. And so, again, if there's inaccuracies there, but I think it makes it pretty important, and it's a fairly succinct statement as to the role of the IG. Again, recognizing that it still has to fall within the contracts and scope of services. So I don't know if Sheriff Jones or you, Nav, wanted to react to that.
Well, I can comment on it, and obviously the executive can comment if he chooses. But I think that's part and parcel what some of the problems were in 2015. I think it was loosely languaged simply because I think everybody was kind of on the same page. I don't think the burden of time changed people's understandings, recollection, or at least desires for the Inspector General. For example, the part that says incur systemic change, well, first of all, that's very flawed language, because he can't incur anything.
No, it says encourage. Encourage.
Oh, encourage.
Encourage.
Okay.
I thought you said incur also.
Oh, no, it's excuse me, encourage. Encourage, yeah.
So he can't cause systemic change. Right. Only I can do that, obviously, even in the old Inspector General, but he could certainly encourage it. So, if necessary, if that is the vision of the Inspector General or their opinion, they can always encourage that. And I think they do in terms of the recommendations that they make. I think that's how they encourage systemic change. Now, there's been recommendations on every single officer-involved shooting or every critical incident that he has opined on, Rick Brazil, that is. Right. We have incorporated many of those changes. We've already incorporated. Some of them we don't, but either way, whether we do or don't, it's for deliberate reasons. So I think that having that superfluous language in there, I think it confuses the issue, and as you pointed out, it is all encompassed in the scope of service, which we really want folks to focus on, including the Inspector General, as what the powers are, what the broad powers are, what the limitations are.
Let me ask, just I guess maybe the real point here is and again, it's stated in the OIG's annual report. Again, it wasn't in the staff report from 2015, but and provides monitor style, in quotes, oversight of Sacramento County Sheriff's Department. So is that, I take that to be accurate, that seems to me to be appropriate in light of the scope here, and yet that language is not incorporated even into a preamble.
Did it say monitor?
Monitor style, provides monitor style.
Monitor style.
Oversight, this was Rick's words from his annual report to the board. Oversight of Sacramento.
I think that's accurate. Yeah. I think it's included in the language. It is monitor style oversight. I mean, it's not oversight in the truest sense that they has absolute autonomy to do whatever they want and make whatever changes they want, but it is monitor, and that word monitor is used, I think, several times throughout the scope of services.
So I guess what I'd suggest is that, depending on where we go with this today, that again, I appreciate Sheriff Jones responding, and certainly you have any response you want to have to it, but it seems to me in the preamble there ought to be, because again, that then I think tracks with some of the conversation here and some of the conversation we've had certainly publicly over the last couple of sessions we've had this, and so just see about incorporating that. So it's clear. It's clear. It's monitor style oversight. I think that word oversight is important, but it has.
I don't mind that. But the danger is the six of us and the county executive can all certainly understand what that means today. but that is what has led us here. I would worry that that language would create a future expectancy that gives the Inspector General greater latitude or broader latitude or a greater mandate than he or she otherwise would have. And so, you know, in going back and forth with the language, one of the things that we tried to do was cut out some of the broad sort of open-ended language and make it say, what does that mean? And then try and define it in definitive terms rather than some of that open-ended stuff that might have a more emotional appeal. I would just, again, I don't mind incorporating that because we all understand the nature and the spirit in which it would be included. I just worry that that would create an open-ended expectancy down the road.
Okay, I appreciate your comments, and again, I think...
Supervisor Tully, I think kind of echoing what the Sheriff is saying is if you get into scope of service itself, a lot of that monitor language is in there. Last discussion we had, there was comments about can we use different words. So in working together, we do have the monitor component in here. It's just not in the preamble. The preamble component, at least from my vantage point in working with the Sheriff and the comments I got from the supervisors, the interest at that point was the word independent. That was something that a premium was put on it, and then the monitor component actually ended up in scope of service. So that was the break point for me when I was working with the Sheriff.
Right, but the word that I don't want missing here, though, is the oversight. And again, if it's qualified and it's understood, and to the Sheriff's point, and to the point, and I granted, independence is in there, it's scope of services. I think that that's an important, again, there may be different views of what that means, but I think, again, if it's clearly understood and spelled out, at least from the perspective of those who are, you know, again, between the Sheriff and the board and certainly with the county executive role, again, I think that's important because otherwise there is no mention anywhere in the scope of services or preamble of the word oversight. And I think, again, making sure that, you know, again, recognize there may be broad interpretations or takes on that I think that the monitor style oversight, I think it's an important, you know, for balance, again, on the balance of this document to understand, because again, I think that, you know, it goes back, otherwise it looks like that's been excised completely from not only the document, but I think then it's unspoken. I mean, you know, it's not spoken to.
I certainly don't mind having oversight incorporated in there if it can be within the parameters and the construct of the scope of services that currently exist. I certainly wouldn't want it as an independent thought, oversight as, you know, oversight comma something else, which would lend itself to some sort of expectation or inference that it just means broad oversight over the department to do whatever they want. Obviously, that's not what we are talking about here.
Looking for definition behind
in the context of oversight and independence to do the functions that are defined within the scope of services, I'm certainly, I don't object to that.
Well, I appreciate that, so I think that should be incorporated.
I think what I'll do is I'll work with the Sheriff. There's a line in here, the IG works independently on items detailed in scope of service. Working with the Sheriff, I think we can put some definition around oversight.
Okay.
I'm certain we can get there.
All right.
Yeah, we can get there.
All right. Then I have a couple other details, but I wanted to certainly respond, I think, next to, and I appreciate Sheriff Jones' you know, positive response to Supervisor Kennedy's question. I had a very similar question. I know I had asked at the last meeting about you know, looking to a contract extension in the interim, and I think the ability to entertain that, I think to use Mr. Kennedy's words, I think it does provide the basis for hopefully beginning to, I think, you know, heal some of the situation. Obviously, you know, all this has been very important. It's been a very important, I think, community discussion, and I know I've received, you know, a good deal of feedback on a pretty regular basis on this. And I think the idea behind the independency, but behind obviously the person that's employed to do that is important. And it's been important in this conversation. And again, it's kind of lent itself to obviously some of the things that have been before this board. But I think the willingness by the Sheriff to you know, entertain that, to agree to that, and assuming Mr. Brazil is willing, and for your ability to bring that together probably within a week's time, I would think, Nav, we're going to be back in session. That contract, I believe, it was due to expire November 30th. Is that correct?
That is correct. If it is available to the board with the scope of service, we do have the ability to extend the contract without coming back to the board. So we have that delegated. I'll check with the county council, but I believe we have the signature power for that.
Okay. Again, I think
and we will communicate back, of course, that
that's an important piece. Then if I could just go to a couple other quick things and then cede my time here. I did get a couple comments, and one of them was regarding in the scope of services, and this just relates to the Roman numeral 7 under I guess it's Roman numeral 7. Roman numeral 7. The contractor shall provide notice to the county communication media director a minimum of 1 week prior to the release of any report to the public. I think notice ought to be given to the board that there's going to be, if there's going to be a release. Again, we're not dictating that, but if your media director has word of that, I would think that the county executive and the board and I guess and the sheriff, if that's that there should be some notice given to at least to this board.
Correct.
Okay, so no harm in that.
Yeah.
Yeah. No harm in that.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Right, okay. And then the last one I wanted to ask about was, now that we're looking at going forward, presuming for a moment a contract extension with the current IG, but then this would go to an RFP next year, that whatever comes out of that process would be a 4-year contract under what you've stipulated here, at least in the scope of services and the recommendation, is that then annually that would be reviewed by the county executive. So is there some report back to the board on that? There's an annual report by the IG, but then under what circumstances under the contract, because now it requires the board chair, with the county, working with the county executive on the contract extension. It didn't require further action, but so talk about the process.
So the process here will be, we're now going to be seeking an annual extension. It's a 4-year contract. There's a termination clause if we get into that spot. It's a standard termination clause, have for all county contracts. What this tries to preserve is that if there is any review that needs to be done as the administrator for the contract, the county exec does it with communication to the full board and to the sheriff, that this is what was solicited input. If there's something in the contract we need to talk about, it provides the process to get us to that spot.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, Mr. Cerna?
Thank you. I don't have any questions for you, Sheriff. So I want to...
I was just, then, I think you can be seated, unless you want to stay.
I just wanted to point out, the 1-year extension, I assume, will incorporate by reference this addendum. Even though it's on the old contract, it will incorporate the language on the extension.
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
So I think it's important, Madam Chair, before we hear from members of the public on this item, to really understand what this board is being asked to do, not just in the context of the current staff report and this singular hearing, but what has occurred over the last several weeks. And as I mentioned clearly last time, and I want to articulate hopefully as clearly this time, in terms of my position, we are here not because of the inherent need to update the scope of services for the Inspector General, because we're between Inspector Generals. We are here because the sheriff of this county responded the way he did to an incident report, a review, and that that response included locking out the Inspector General because of the substance of what was in the review, the circumstance of the review, and the timing of the review. That was put in writing. I feel strongly, as I did last time, this time, that I want no part of this. I will not be supporting it. And let's remember, too, despite the fact that the sheriff may be agreeing to accept Rick Brazil back as IG, it's now in the context of this exercise that has been going on for weeks to appease the agency, the agent, for whom we're asking independent review. That runs contrary to the whole principle of it. And for me, I don't understand why a majority of this board would spend their time and energy, trying to scramble to basically get to a point where a question is asked of the sheriff, will you reinstate the IG, but under the circumstance of this new revised scope, and then we can all expect that it's going to be a new day for independent review of the Sheriff's Department. That is not the case. All right? So let's not forget why we are here. The time to have done this exercise, to go through this exercise, was when, in 2015, the sheriff and I, as chair of the board at that point, were asked to go through a very deliberate process to select the IG. We selected Rick Brazil. That was the time to ask the question, hey, does the scope of services for this contract need to be updated? We should have gone through it then, not now. The CEO, the sheriff, should have made their comments known publicly then, not now, about the merit of the scope of services and whether or not it needed to be revised. We are going through this exercise in response to the sheriff's response to an instant review that he disagreed with, the timing of which he disagreed with, and the circumstance of which he disagreed with. That is a fact. So again, I will not be supporting this recommendation. I do think this is kabuki theater, quite frankly, so we can check a box and say that we've gone through the motion of updating the scope so the sheriff can come to the podium and say, yes, under these circumstances, I'm willing to reinstate Rick Brazil. So I just want to make that clear before we hear from the public. Thank you.
Supervisor Frost. Supervisor Frost.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I want to just back up a little bit also and say that the whole reason we're here is because at the county we want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to ensure that our public safety and our deputies have the best opportunity not only to keep our neighborhoods safe, but to keep them safe while they're doing that. And I also want to thank the sheriff because he was, and the county.
Excuse me, we're having a meeting here and we have rules of conduct, so please keep your comments to yourself. You'll have your opportunity to speak, so right now is our opportunity to speak. Ms. Supervisor Frost?
I also would like to thank our sheriff, who was originally the one who wanted an inspector general, and for the council that arranged for that in 2015, and also Rick Brazil, who's done a really good job as inspector general, and who has had a great relationship with our sheriff deputies and with our sheriff. So I agree with Supervisor Kennedy that this is a better contract. There were some issues that I brought up earlier in past meeting, and my issues were really trying to get to, let's figure out a way so that the Inspector General is truly an independent position, one that isn't leaning any way, but that is an independent eye on our department and helping us see areas where we can improve our functionality or improve our processes to become the better than we already are. And so I think this contract strikes a good compromise. Sheriff Jones said this contract provides more clarity. I agree that there was a lack of clarity in the past contract, and this one is better. I do also want to say that I received some feedback from my constituents who felt that maybe I was not seeing the whole picture, and I went to the effort to meet with Rick Brazil, and who, by the way, holds our sheriff in very high regard and who is a complete professional. And I'm excited that there's a possibility that they can work something out, because I think they, you know, based on what I'm hearing from the sheriff, they both hold each other in high regard and want to work, are willing to have that conversation. And so in my meeting with Rick Brazil, it was clear that he felt just the same way my constituents do and the same way I feel, which is we need an independent review. We need an independent review. So based on all of that, I'm excited that we've come to a compromise and that we have a better contract, and I'm prepared to support it.
Okay, thank you. And now we'll hear from the public. If you haven't signed up on a speaker form, now's the time to do it. And we do remind you we do have a 2-minute limit here at the Board of Supervisors. So the first speaker is Doris Brown, and then I'm not sure I'm reading this correctly, but okay. And then the second speaker is Robert Sopin and Jim Eichener. Doris Brown.
Teach our children transparency. How can they trust in the government? This is a new voter here.
Board of Supervisors, I came to...
Could you state your name for the record, please?
I'm sorry, I'm Doris Brown, and I'm partly representing Indivisible, and I came initially to support the importance of transparency and that I really support law enforcement, but it does not feel safe to be somewhere where law enforcement is out of control. And of course, that's the way it's felt to many of us. The incident with the sheriff was ridiculous. We're getting a lot of national attention. It's extremely embarrassing that we, as a city, have very active movements against law enforcement, and it doesn't feel safe to me to hear a report where sheriffs unnecessarily are firing at freeways. So I'm very much in favor of public safety and our law enforcement, but it's absolutely critical that there be oversight and transparency. As I heard the first part of this meeting, I thought, oh, good, it's all taken care of. And I was, yay, you guys have worked really hard on this. And then when I heard Phil, who I very much respect, it's like, wow, have we just rolled over so the sheriff really is in control of the independent review? So that's my question to you. I don't know.
Thank you. I'm not sure if I'm getting this correctly. It looks like Robert Sopin on...
Is it Copeland?
Habsit, could be Copeland. 1725.
Yep.
Okay.
Normally I would speak on housing or disability rights or homeless, but what the sheriff did is totally wrong. How can you be an independent an IEG if the sheriff can lock the door on him? That is unacceptable. And him walking out, that's an act of cowardice. I'd like to see the sheriff removed from office just because of that incident. I mean, really, if he can't stand up to the heat, get out of the kitchen. Scott Jones is a joke as a sheriff. He should be removed or fired for incompetence or malfeasance or something. How can you lead, how can AIG do his job if he's got to look over the sheriff's shoulder all the time? Thank you.
Jim Eichner. Then Eichner. Then Bruce Palmer and Kean Bliss.
Good morning, Chair Peters, supervisors, and my friends. I am Jim Eichener from Carmichael, a member of St. Mark's United Methodist Church, speaking for myself. At 2 earlier meetings, I asked you to maintain and renew the existing IG contract. You chose a different path, but you're making progress, as is evident in the conversation this morning. I have a few editorial suggestions here that I will give to the clerk in a moment, but I want to focus on the big picture. Weeds grow in every garden, even among the dedicated public servants in the sheriff's department. A good gardener tends to her weeding so she gets the best crops. A good local government should also tend to the weeding, a task you assigned to the IG. I commend you for your effort to maintain this office, because the independent IG helps produce the best work in the department and helps the public know it. Going off script, in item 46, just before this, you got an award for the de-escalation training in the Youth Detention Center. All I'm asking here is that you extend that same wisdom and that same investment to strategies to be used on the streets. The sheriff's cooperation is critical to success here, as we've seen. I commend him for the commitment, as he has made it this morning, to get back on board. But equally important is that the scope avoid any hint that the sheriff can veto an inquiry or report to by the IG. His claim of veto power over the existing contract is what got us here. So my suggested edits address that point. An effective and independent inspector general makes Sacramento County safer and truly supports the statutory duty of the sheriff to preserve peace. With the sheriff's cooperation, Sacramento County can have transparency and peacemaking and wise use of public funds. Thank you.
Thank you. Before Mr. Palmer speaks, Mr. Eichner? Mr. Natoli has a question for you.
Yeah, Jim, just while you had that up, you handed it to the clerk. I wanted to make sure we got a copy of that, but I wanted, you had 3 different points there, and one of them was, I think you touched on it very briefly, but I think it's important, Mr. Gill, for you to point out, and in Jim's, maybe you can put that item back up so I can refer to it, Flo, if we could. And it's under Roman numeral 5, and that relates to the access to facilities. And I know you've explained this certainly in briefings, but I think it's important to understand, you know, what's not stated now, but what the intent and what's, you know, what's understood that may not be explicit here. So we need to make clear about that.
Yeah. So one of the items in last hearing we had was Article 5 got us into a conversation about what does that really end up meaning. So in conversations with the sheriff and further looking into it, the point there is the contractor should have access to records. It's not so much the facility component. And the research we did is that we found that that provision got put in there, we believe, back in '07, is that if there's a security risk at our jail, that the OIG couldn't go in there. So it seems like there's 2 conflicting components in there. So we took that out of this with the understanding that the OIG will have access to any kind of confidential, non-confidential records. And that's what's stated in one of the other provisions in here. So the facility component, we thought was a redundant or bumped into what the intent is to get to the records.
Okay.
So if you read, I'm looking at my, what is the new Roman numeral 4, to the extent permitted by law, contractors shall be authorized to examine any report, confidential or otherwise, and reproduce any non-confidential reports and records. In all instances, the contractor must maintain the confidentiality of all confidential document. All records must be returned upon completion of a report. So the intent there is to have absolute access to what the incident is, get the confidential, non-confidential information, do the review, complete the report when it's done, and then those records come back to the county.
Well, let me ask, though, in the instance, because, again, and certainly along with Supervisor Peters, having been here, went through this in '06, '07, that we had a number of in-custody deaths. And again, you know, those obviously have, you know, the impact at the immediate moment, but then there's investigation, certainly internal, but there may be and we had these discussions, again, I haven't gone back and reviewed the record, but I know about, you know, what the IG might look at. And part of that is that they could go into the jail facilities, whether it was at the main jail or RCCC. I think even in the case of juvenile hall, if there was an event that happened there. And so by being silent on this, recognizing that you're looking at records, you're doing follow-on to investigations, or in the event of a citizen complaint about conditions in the jail, that the ability for the IG certainly to have access. Again, it may not be in the present moment in which the incident occurred, but again, to view for his or herself, you know, whatever those conditions might be, to appropriate to the contract, to do the interviews, both with sheriff staff, assuming if somebody obviously was there in the jail, that they could be interviewed, you know, with appropriate measures. So I guess I'm curious, because I understand your point, but I think the point that Jim makes, and one that kind of harkens back, at least in my mind, to discussions we had, and it was, if nothing else, part of what kind of got us here, is that there was
that point,
lockout of facility.
There is no lockout in this contract.
So the OIG cannot be locked out.
Cannot. I mean, that's any of our contracts we have. We don't have that language. And I think it was a very unique language got put in there. Don't really understand. We had a conversation about it. But the way this is written is that the OIG has access.
Access is granted.
Yes.
And it's not at the discretion of the sheriff.
No.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Eichner.
Good. Thanks, Jim.
Thank you.
Bruce Palmer, then Kean Bliss, and Jason Weiner.
Madam Chair, members of the Board of Supervisors, I'm Bruce Palmer, and I'm chair of the Jewish Community Relations Council. As you know, we supported a strong, independent commission, and we still support that kind of a strong, independent commission. I want to make it clear today that after hearing the conversation, we have very grave doubts about whether this is going to work, and therefore we oppose this particular proposal. We agree with Supervisor Cerna's remarks in terms of his concerns about how this will work, and frankly, we appreciate the complexity of this issue, the hard work you've all put into this. But we think it would be much better to hold off on approval of this today and work on it some more, because the faith of the community, the trust of the community, the transparency of the process is absolutely critical. It's good for law enforcement, it's good for the community. So we would want you to hold off today and appreciate the opportunity to testify before you today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Palmer. Kean Bliss, Jason Weiner. Pardon me?
Keon Bliss.
Keon Bliss, yes. Then Jason Weiner and Rhonda Rios-Kravitz.
Thank you, Supervisor Cerna, for expressing what many of us have been feeling, though probably not nearly as polite as the way you say it. Probably better the way you do it. Honestly, I'm wondering whether this is actually a county board of supervisors, or is this some kind of daycare for a pouty child that happens to be running in the Sacramento County Sheriff's Department? What is this right now? What are you offering us? The idea that the last contract somehow allowed Sheriff Scott Jones to just unilaterally bar an independent inspector general from inspecting his facilities because of one report that he didn't like from a police chief with over 30 years of experience is laughable. And that this is even like you have to actually specify that, and that he can't somehow do this again with his current contract. Honestly, what is this? It's just, this is honestly just political theater. Supervisor Cerna said, this is kabuki theater. You are all supposed to be representing over 1.5 million people across Sacramento County. And here you are bowing and kowtowing to one individual, one elected official, just because he didn't like one report that came out that showed his department, his officers violated department policy, murdered somebody, and put hundreds of thousands of other people during rush hour at risk. He didn't like that report, so he removed the only independent oversight that he had. And you all went along with that. Are you kidding? I need this county board of supervisors to show some fucking backbone, outright. And if no one else is going to say it, I fucking will.
Thank you, Mr.
Get your
Bliss.
shit together.
Jason Weiner, Rhonda Rios-Kravitz, and Rachel Harrington after that. Mr. Weiner.
Thank you. My name is Jason Weiner, and I am here to urge you to exert strong leadership to protect the people of this county by not allowing the contract language for the Office of the Inspector General to be watered down, and in fact to institute a strong civilian review board to also have oversight power. The ethos of any county department should be transparency and dedication to the public welfare and safety. It is your responsibility as supervisors to ensure that all county officials are held to this standard and that you and the public have the info we need to hold them accountable. We understand and we honor the role that deputy sheriffs play in keeping our county safe, but they cannot be exempt from this public accountability, especially since their actions have deadly consequences. This sheriff has shown time and time again that he will blithely disregard any attempt to hold him and his department accountable for their decisions, or even to allow information to get out that you and we need and demand. The creation of the IG position was an attempt to provide this transparency, but it only works if the Inspector General has the access and independent institutional power to perform the job that he's hired to do. There is no need to compromise with this sheriff on his own oversight. You can choose the terms and the Inspector General. The sheriff does not need to agree. Therefore, as a member of the Jewish Community Relations Council, the Latino Jewish Coalition, Sacramento area congregations together, I strongly urge you to reject this contract language, institute the old contract language so that the OIG can retain the original powers that you granted that position. The IG should have full independent access to facilities. That should be written into the contract so there's no question about it. The IG should be able to investigate every incident and be able to speak publicly on every incident. If the sheriff continues to deny the Inspector General this access that he is legally due, you should stand firm to protect that access by subpoenaing him and the department's records, and even if necessary.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Weiner. Your time is up. Rhonda Rios-Kravitz, and Rachel Harrington and Karen Gunderson.
Good morning, Chair Peters and members of the board. I am here to speak on behalf of Alianza and Step Up, which are members of the Sacramento Immigration Coalition, which gave you a letter yesterday. We are here today to speak in strong opposition to the contract language and to ask the board to hold Sheriff Jones accountable. We ask that you investigate Sheriff Jones using a subpoena, a call for a grand jury investigation, or the filing of a lawsuit to conduct a thorough investigation into the shooting of Michael McIntyre. Years of unaddressed complaints against the sheriff without strong review and oversight have been a significant factor in the deterioration of relations between the sheriff and the community. We rely on the sheriff and his officers to uphold public safety, but we also entrust them with extraordinary authority, including the powers to use deadly force and to decide who gets stopped, searched, arrested, and funneled into the criminal justice legal system. This great power must be balanced by accountability and transparency, including the release of relevant data, such as information about stops, summonses, arrests, reported crime, use of force incidents, and other law enforcement data aggregated by demographics. This data should be released on a quarterly basis with current data on the Board of Supervisors website. The board should also issue an annual report. Do not put in place a weak effort to hold this sheriff accountable, as this will only lead to an increase in community resentment, as residents who come to this board to seek redress will only end up with little or no accountability and transparency. The time to act is now. Put in place an effective, independent civilian review board with the OIG's authority built into the independent civilian rewards charge. Thank you.
Thank you. Rachel Harrington. Rachel Harrington, has she left? Okay. Karen Gunderson. And then Carly Brannon.
Hi, my name is Rachel Harrington. I live in District 4 and have previously lived in 1, 2, and 3, or 1, 3, and 5 as well. I support a strong independent investigation into the Sheriff Department, and I encourage you to hold off on this action today until the previous contract or an even stronger contract can be put in place. It needs to explicitly state that the investigator has access and that the sheriff cannot lock him or her out not just assumed because it is not stated otherwise. We need to protect our residents and not have further situations happen like what happened to Michael McIntyre. Thank you.
Thank you. Carly Brannon. I'm sorry?
I believe Karen Gunderson was next.
Oh, sorry, she didn't respond when I called her name.
She did.
Okay, I'm sorry. It was Rachel Harrington that left. Karen Gunderson, I'm sorry.
Rachel just spoke.
Good morning, thank you.
Good morning.
My name's Karen Gunderson. I live in District 1, and I thank Supervisor Cerna for his comments. Similarly, I find this process of revisiting a contract in the middle of its term to be reinforcing of a public official who had frankly, a temper tantrum. I think we need a strong OIG. The contract shouldn't be watered down. There needs to be meaningful oversight that results in accountability. There needs to be transparency, as a previous speaker spoke about. There needs to be oversight that has investigative power with a high degree of independence and who also has accountability to the public. I worked for the state of California for doing legislative analysis for more than 20 years, and frankly, the language monitor style oversight is doublespeak. It's the kind of language you use when you want to sound like you're doing something, but you're really not. So please follow the process of revising contracts in time and not watering down the one that you currently have. Thank you.
Carly Brannon. And then Alian Murphy Hassan.
So I'm going to echo what Phil Cerna and several of my comrades have said here today. The language may have been changed, but the intent is exactly the same. So what necessitated this change in contract? It was Sheriff Scott Jones throwing a temper tantrum because the IG came in and questioned the tactics that his deputies used when they willfully took the life of Michael McIntyre. He threw a tantrum and locked him out of the facilities. That is something that should not have ever happened. Scott Jones is drunk with power. You heard it earlier today in this very room where he said, I am the only one who has the ability to make systemic change. And then he left before public comment even began, before the vote was taken. So it sounds as if he already knows what's going to happen here today, which makes me question what he's doing for you guys. So let's not forget that Scott Jones has cost Sacramento taxpayers more than $1 million in settlements for excessive force, rape, torture, the use of military weapons in his jail, and in-custody deaths. To approve his recommendations is to co-sign his absolutely reprehensible behavior, the devastation that it causes to our community members, the lives that it takes, your constituents, and the exorbitant cost to taxpayers if you would prefer to focus on money, which I'm sure a few of you, that's why you're here today. By approving his changes, you're allowing him control over this investigation, which means it is not independent at all. So I want to thank you, Supervisor Cerna, for your comments and for standing up. The rest of you really need to think about what you're doing.
Thank you. Carly Brannon, then Alian Murphy Hassan, and T. Whitney.
Rogue sheriff, shot 28 times. What horrible headlines Sacramento is making. My name is Alian Murphy Hassan. I am first VP for the Greater Sacramento NACP. President Williams is regrettably unable to be here today. She does have a real job. I am here representing our executive board and our over 1,200 members, and we're demanding that this board take action to ensure that our citizens are protected, that there's transparency, that there's accountability. And right now, we're not seeing that. Right now, we're not hearing that from you. I'm calling you out, Don Natoli, Patrick Kennedy. Do what the people need you to do. Do not support this rewrite. Do not support this watered-down agreement today. Look at it again. Give us what we need. We need you to be accountable to us, to be accountable to those who elected you, to be accountable to those who support you. Support the public. Shot 28 times. A rogue sheriff. Horrible, horrible headlines. Horrible place to put Sacramento. A horrible place to put our citizenship. We look to you to support politics, to support people, not politics. Supporting people, not politics. That's what you have to do today. Do the right thing. Do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you. T. Whitney, then Bert Clemens, and Carolyn Colbert. T. Whitney? So there's no first name, so. I go by T. Oh, you do go by T, okay. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm here to stand in solidarity with Black Lives Matter Sacramento. I'd like to say justice for Michael McIntyre. I'd also like to say that what I've observed here today is reprehensible to me, particularly the behavior of elected Sheriff Scott Jones. This is akin to like a child locking their parents out of the house after they've tried to burn it down. You know, I don't understand how there can even be consideration to give him what he wants, given his bad behavior. I know I almost feel like I'm insulting children to compare his behavior to that of a child, because children don't know better. He knows exactly what he's doing. He's willfully exercising his power to get his way. And the original contract, I think it does need to be improved, but definitely not with the recommendations being made today. I am a member of District 1. I do vote for you, and I appreciate your voice often in the minority here on this board. But I want to say that I expect better from all of you. I don't have to say anything to my District 1 representative, but I'm unsure about where Don and Patrick stand. It's clear where Susan and Sue stand, so you're just a repeated disappointment. I don't even have to listen to you when you speak. You're a mouthpiece for the DA and for Scott Jones. Your bias is so incredibly over the top. It's absolutely disappointing to sit here and to think that there's anything independent or there's anything that could persuade you. You and him are akin to one another. It's like it's offensive to have you code that with language that you're here to protect the public and the people that are here to protect and serve the public. If you were thinking about the public, you would be ready to recall Scott Jones and join the rest of us that want to do the same.
Thank you. Bert Clemens, then Carolyn Colbert,
My
and
name
Sarah.
is Bert Clemens. I'm 74 years old. 1955, I saw the picture of Emmett Till. I was 10 years old. I just came back from a road trip. I planned to go to Detroit. For 2 years, I wanted to be the happiest thing, the most fun thing. I wanted to take my handicapped brothers with me. Ended up just my one brother and our wives. It was a terrible trip. Came across so many people that were afraid of me and terrorized me in many different ways, too many to even to state. Phil, I'm so proud of you. So proud of you. Your dad would be proud of you. I'm not sure. I don't know. I'm District 2. I don't know how he supported you or not. I'm I'm not privy to that, but I hope he did. How's this going to trickle down to the guy on the beat? This thing have come and revisited me. I'm 74 years old, and I never thought that I would be afraid again to be black. But it's happening so much. And I say to all of my brothers and sisters who are not of color that are here, like the Freedom Riders, we need you. Thank you for coming. Thank you for showing your support. I don't have much hope for what is going to happen. I know you're going to do your thing. I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed in this climate. I'm disappointed in how this is happening. I thought as we integrated and became a country of freedom and loving one another that we were going to do away with all of this stuff. But boy, if you keep on teaching your children that and you keep on keeping your mouths closed just to get your behinds voted in again, where are we as a country?
Thank you, Mr. Clemens. Carolyn Colbert. Are you Carolyn?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning, board.
Morning.
I spoke to you guys on August 7th about the issues we were having with the sheriff and another agency. And after the meeting, well, after I spoke, Inspector General Brazil approached me, and out of all the law enforcement agencies we tried to seek out for help, he is the only one who met with us on our time and our place. To me, that speaks volume of the character. I don't know him personally, but I do remember him being the police chief for 30-something years. So I'm just really, I'm at wit's end. He's the only one who ever tried to respond. I left a letter for my supervisor, Mr. Kennedy, on September 25th. I have yet to hear any response back about this incident. What do we do now? He was in the process of helping us with the sheriff's department. When I requested my records, I had to get legal, which I can't really afford a lawyer, but I paid someone to help me get my records from the sheriff. They gave me a little packet, which I can show you. He said that he saw 72 pages. Now, this is not 72 pages. But before he could finish up with us, Sheriff Jones locked him out of the personnel. So my comment is basically twofold. I feel that that is such an injustice. If you're an independent inspector general, how can you say that person can't do their job? You guys should not allow it. There's got to be something in the charter legally that he has to work with you, even if he is elected. He's an elected official. He's not the board. There should be some way.
Could you wind up, finish
to
your comments,
corral
please?
him, because you guys are the boss to me, not him. Number two, okay, I will wind up. Number two is, out of everybody we approach, my family, and like I said before in August, it's just women and children. So if we don't have a sheriff or law enforcement to protect us, who do we go to?
Okay, thank you. Mr. Kennedy has a comment for you.
If I could call a previous speaker back, something struck me that I have a follow-up question, if I could, from the Vice President. Is
Thank you, Ms. Colbert.
NAACP? Is it the Vice President of NAACP? Yes. Oh, yeah. If you could come to I just have a clarifying question, because the last hearing there was pretty significant representation from NAACP, and one of the gentlemen said, I don't think he's here today, but I just wanted your feeling on this. This is a sincere, not planned question. It was actually said that the reason that, and I believe the word was we, felt comfortable, meaning I would imagine the NAACP, over the last few years was because the trust that you had in Rick Brazil, and that's what kept you away from our chambers, frankly. So what, I mean, you heard the sheriff say that he would support bringing Rick Brazil back. Where do you say, please, we're trying to hold a hearing here in which I'm trying to get to the heart of a really serious matter.
We do support bringing Mr. Brazil back. As I mentioned before, we trusted because of his experience and because of his independence that we would be protected and we would get the information we needed to know what's going on in our jails. There was a point where we talked about access to the facility. People go up in the jail and they die. They die. Right. We get no accountability to that. He needs to go into the jail to find out what's going on, why people are dying. I mean, they die. Grown people, healthy people, they die.
So I guess the heart of the question there is, so you're not confident, even with Rick Brazil back, that he'll have that access based upon this proposal?
Based upon this, yes.
Okay.
Correct. So we need to shore this up a great deal. And I know Don and you will do the right thing and make sure that that happens so that the people who came here today in opposition will be in support. And that's what we want. We want transparency, we want accountability, and as suggested, use your charter rights. Use the rights that are in your charter. You know, there was suggested that bring a lawsuit. I know your attorney said that at some point she suggested that subpoena, he could be subpoenaed, but she didn't think that a judge would support that. Well, let's test that out. Let's subpoena him and test that out to see if a judge would support it.
Okay, I appreciate you coming back
Thank
up,
you.
and I appreciate your respectful nature too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sarah? So, I don't have a last name. Okay, Sarah. And then Zuri Colbert. And
I think people assume too much.
then Tanya
I didn't come here to
Faison.
speak today. I never speak, but I happen to live in the county, and thank you, Mr. Cerna, for your support. I brought my daughter here today hoping that Patrick and Don would do the right thing and show transparency and vote against this. I'm starting to believe that that's going to be otherwise. You have seen, again, as somebody said, that the sheriff came up here and demanded that he was the only one who can make change. It's your community that should be able to make change. We're the ones who are out here hurting. We're the ones out here being abused. We're the ones who have to drive down the freeway and risk being shot by his officers because they want to kill somebody having a mental breakdown. It's not right, and you guys ought to be ashamed of yourselves. Susan Peters, you ought to be ashamed of yourself as well. I live in your district. I see what you allow at the receiving home. I see the hurt that the children have over there because of the people that are in care of them. I don't believe in any of you other than Mr. Cerny. I will be looking for a home in your area soon. Thank you.
Zuri Colbert. And then Tanya Faison, and that's the last speaker I have signed up to speak.
I'm someone who also doesn't regularly speak in front of everyone, but I've been here before. My daughter was actually honored by the Sacramento County for a resolution for History Day during this period. I see that you disrespected my mother, who's here in the audience, when she asked you about the letter and the details and the proof that we provided you for the years of violations my daughter and I have experienced, and we kept moving. We've moved. We represent Black Lives Matter on the other end. We're the people who believe you do everything to problem solve it, but if you have safety issues, you have violations going on, you have no choice with the house full of women and things happening to seek authorities' help, and that is something that we did. And when that happened, we were retaliated against when we spoke out against Detective Hirota, who, when we had to go forward and do that, when my moms had to come forward, Rick Brazil was the only person that came to meet with us in the community. He had 76 pages of what we had turned in with the packet that we received from our attorney that was less than 15 17 pages. There's an atrocity there. But more than that, just what Sacramento, it's not just the Sacramento County sheriffs. It's the practices of the Sacramento County where they've tied 17 dirty, vile sex abuse cases, child abuse cases to my daughter. And you guys put that in writing that you broke California penal codes, welfare institution codes, and did nothing about it. All I asked to keep that on the low so my daughter would not be exposed during this period. Please put that in writing so when she turns 18, I can be able to speak to her. And your own county board did not do that, even after they promised in front of an advocate, in front of my family, and now I hope it's documented so she knows. Nothing has been done about that. It's not just the Sacramento County Sheriff, it's the practices of this board. You, Susan Peters, you awarded my daughter this resolution, and we still are in a place where we don't feel safe. We don't feel safe with the Sheriff's Department. We don't feel safe going to the police. Retaliation after retaliation for speaking up, and we're the families that represent Black Lives Matter on the other end. My mom's worked 30-something years. You have no right to ever in your life disrespect her for the county. I work for the county. Our family has worked for the county. You guys have no right to disrespect your own peers.
For real. Right. Tanya Faison, and then Ms. Lopez. Alma Lopez, after Ms. Faison.
So thank you, Serna, like for real. Thank you so much for speaking out, because none of you did except for him. I didn't plan on speaking. I just wanted to mention some things that have been overlooked by the previous speakers. You all talked about taking out the word shall and putting in may, and Scott Jones positioned it as may doesn't make it a mandate. What it does, though, is it doesn't make it a requirement. And when it's not a requirement, then it doesn't happen, and there's a way to manipulate it. And so that's what I want to make sure that y'all take that into consideration, because it should say shall. Oversight is oversight. It's not an option. When it becomes official, it's official, and it needs to be official. The word shall should stay there. He stood up here and said he's the only person that can make systemic change. That is just completely offensive. We are the people. We have the power to make change as well. You as a board, you have the power to make systemic change as well. So I want you to look at that. And I don't even, Susan Peters, I don't even want to, because you are like his best friend. So I'm talking to Natoli, I'm talking to Kennedy. CERN has already stood his position. Frost, I don't have faith in you. But we really don't need to get a vote on this today. It needs to be looked at deeper, and it needs to be made stronger. We need to have true oversight. We do need to have a commission, but that needs to be looked at deeper as well, because it doesn't need to be in the hands of someone or created by people that have Scott Jones' interests at heart. He needs to be controlled. It started with, for me, it started with Adrian Led. He was killed by the Sacramento Sheriff Department. One officer shot at Adrian 30-something times. That is just disgusting. And since then, there have been so many lawsuits against deputies, either outside of the jail, inside of the jail, molestation, rape, weapons used inside the jail. It's just, I don't even understand how he got reelected. I don't understand how you guys have a working relationship with this man.
Right. Thank you for your comments. Alma Lopez.
My name is Alma Lopez. I live in District 3. And I just want to point out that since Scott Jones has been in office, our Black and brown families have been broken and torn apart due to bars, bullets, and deportations. So I've been trying to work with this man since 2014 on specific immigration policies that he's failed, that he hasn't been held accountable to. And I want to just raise and continue the voice that my peers have said earlier right now, that there needs to be strong language, strong accountability, and it's to our people, to our community. So I'm looking to you, Susan Peters, to step up your game and really represent your community, because this has gone for far too long. Since 2014, we're trying to figure out what his roles and responsibilities were, trying to hold him accountable. Then nothing had happened. Then we came to the board hoping that there was more accountability done on your end. And so we're at a point that we are voters, we are organizing. He needs to be recalled. He does not need to be in office. And we need to look to you for support. And so again, our communities are not safe with him in power, and we need you to step up your game. And again, I'm just going to raise that our people here present and our students need someone better who's really representing them. So I'm looking to you for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that's all of our speakers today. It's back to the Board of Supervisors. Mr. Natoli, and then Mr. Kennedy.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Serna.
In listening to some of the testimony, I want to ask you, Robin Trevon, our county counsel, some of the underlying theme, obviously, is that with what's being proposed in the scope of services, the contract language change, some of it mirrors what was in previous, which is in the existing contract. Some of it does not, and obviously the county executive has walked through that. And I don't know whether you'd be prepared today or certainly within a week's time to come back. What I would like to see is an analysis of where, again, using certainly your judgment and legal background, where there are limitations on what the IG currently has in the contract scope of services versus what's being proposed. If there are limitations, if it interferes with independent investigation, independent review, examination, recommendations. Again, contracts certainly have language that have meaning and intent. Obviously, I appreciate what my colleague Mr. Serna said. Obviously, he was chair at the time. This board approved that action. I quoted from some of that in my comments this morning. But as I hear, obviously, from the viewpoint of many of the people who've spoken here this morning and others, I think having a clear understanding as a representative, recognizing that there are many views on this, where there are contrasts in the language, not so much in the change in language, but where it would limit the ability of the IG and or not, or expand the ability. Is that something, Robin, you could do in a fairly short order, so we could have, again, people may disagree with that analysis, but I think an analysis is an important one. If you're I assume you're an appropriate person to do that for this board, but could you give me some thoughts on that?
So you've asked, can I compare the scope of work as it presently exists to the scope of work that's previously been utilized, and there are several versions of that.
Right.
Yes, that in short order, I can provide you what those version changes consist of. I would just like to point out for clarity that this scope of services, each time there's been a new contract awarded to the Inspector General, this is an attachment to a contract.
Right.
So it's an attachment. The scope of services is the specificity of detailed work that's attached to a larger contract. So to the extent that you want to task the executive to work with me on clarifying any of those languages, we can certainly do that in addition to what this version is compared to past versions.
And I think it's important, again, because obviously what precipitated us getting here today certainly is a series of events, and again, obviously puts in question some of the concerns that are rightfully before us. But if we're looking at the scope of services and the contractor, in this case Mr. Brazil, who is currently under contract with this county to do that, and the actions that were taken to get us to here today, obviously in the conversation we had, I just think it's important to know, because what is it that we're doing, what's before us, if we were to take action on this, how that changes. And I mean, having your view, obviously, and certainly Mr. Gill has been a part of the process, a very integral, because he's actually sat down with the sheriff and worked through this. But I think your analysis would be very important to this, because I'd like to have that understanding. I think the community would like to have that understanding. So if you could do that, again, recognizing that we may not be settled on all the language yet, but I think it's important. And again, we have another meeting next Tuesday, and it's not to belabor this or to drag it out, but I think that's important. I also wanted to say that some of the suggestions today, now recognizing that you've had comments from this board earlier on, prior to the public testimony. I think the point made about the shall needs to be taken a look at, and I appreciate Ms. Fasson bringing that forward. But I know that was a point of discussion between myself and the sheriff earlier. at the dais. And then this whole thought, though, that somehow we're going to, by virtue of what we're, what's before us, that we're going to then constrict or constrain the ability of the IG to have independent review, and again, not to be repetitive here, but examination and recommendations, and to be able to draw upon the records that are available to him in this case, but he or she in the case of the Inspector General. I want to make sure that that's clear in the preamble about the independency, and I think you communicated with this board when you earlier in the summer, and one of your statements was just this is an independent contractor, and this comes from the contract. The manner, method, or sequence used by the OIG in the performance of the duties is not subject to manipulation or interference for accomplishing his results, and I think that's very important. But again, that may be understood. It may be a point of contention with some folks, but I think it maybe needs to be something that either in the preamble or if that's directly from the contract, because we have the contract and then we have this attachment, the scope of services, which is again is very critical because it talks about all the things we've kind of focused on this morning. But I'd like to have that analysis, if you could provide it, maybe and Ab, you could weigh in on that. And I think that the preamble, you've got a good start here, but I do think that oversight needs to be understood clearly. And if it's different than what the oversight was in the existing contract, then to have some clarity around that too. Because again, I think it's a fair question. Whatever we decide, people may agree or disagree, but I think we need to understand what that is. And I guess lastly, I would just ask that if we were to take an intervening week, and I don't know what the other members of the board think about that, but I think that as a part of that, again with your good work, to work with the current IG, recognizing the willingness by the sheriff here this morning to entertain that yeah. But nonetheless, the IG that you have that before us. Again, it may not require our action to extend that contract, but I think that if that's going to be in place, that we have that full understanding package before us at the time we're asked to take any action upon this. So I would request that. Lastly, I think this access to facilities. I asked about it earlier. You were very direct when you responded to me, but I think that needs to be either stated. So it's not just implied, that needs to be explicit. That, and again, if it's if it's applicable county-wide, that's fine. But that was part of what precipitated the action. I think that's got this before us, and so I'd like to see us try to either incorporate that and/or put that into the contract or scope of services or a staff report, however that's embodied, so that there's no mistaking that it's in writing somewhere. So,
thank you, Mr. Kennedy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, I think that the original language, what was it, 2007 and then 2015, an update, I think there were far too many ambiguities in it that did lead to a lot of where we're at. I do think that, and I've been working on some of this language, and I'm going to ask you to please be respectful because you assume too much.
Yeah, you've had your time to speak, and now it's the members of the board's turn to speak.
So I do think that this language is better than what we had before. I do think that there's more independence in it. I do think there's more of a role of the board in it. However, I do not think that it goes far enough as far as Mr. Gill said that it will preclude the sheriff from locking out in the future. I don't see it here. So believe it or not, please don't. When I come to these hearings, I come with my mind open and to hear what the public has to say. And this is not just based on what the public said. Some of it's based upon what the sheriff said, but I can't support this today. I think that it has some more work to be done. Some of you will recall that I called for a more beefed up Sheriff's Oversight Committee, which is actually called Outreach Committee, which I think is a mistake, and I continue to call for that, and I have since I've been on this board. Let me address to this woman here that I apologize if I was abrupt with you. My mind was racing, and I wanted to, by the thought about it, I wanted to ask the question of the representative of the NAACP, but I apologize if I was abrupt. No way did I mean to disrespect you at any point. So without more safeguards to preclude us from getting to where we've been in the past, I'm not ready to support this today.
Thank you. Mr. Cerna?
Thank you. Well, I won't belabor what I've already stated in terms of my own position and the reasons for it, but I do want to just add this one aspect that hasn't really been discussed thus far, and that's the fact that this is not being proposed in a vacuum. There's been a number of different efforts collateral to what's before the board today, one of which was, and what has been reported in the media, is I sent a memo to our county council, and the entire board was privy to it, and it was asking a simple question, and that was whether or not at the time when the sheriff decided to exercise his unilateral ability to lock out the existing inspector general, whether or not that was legal. And what we received back after a number of weeks, which I assume was the time necessary to do thorough legal research, there was a fairly detailed and somewhat complex response. This board has not had the benefit, nor has the public had the benefit, of really understanding that response. And so I think to act on this today is very premature. Other members of the board have already made their statements about what they see as deficiencies or the need for more time. What I would suggest to this board, and make in the form of a motion, is that we suspend what's before us today and instead ask the CEO working with the county council's office to come back, and whether it's in workshop form or with some deliberative recommendation, have a conversation and have the public hear so that they can certainly weigh in on what that legal response was to the question, does the sheriff even have the legal authority to do what he did? Because that really, again, is part of the genesis for why we are here today. So that's the motion I would make, and I would look for a second.
Second the motion.
Is there any discussion of this motion?
If I may also, I'm not sure that we've done enough to look at best practices. You know, there's, in this great nation of ours, there has to be an example of who's doing this right. And I would really like to have an exhaustive research exercise of who's doing it right in what community, and see if we can incorporate some of that into the discussion going forward.
Mr. Natoli?
So if I understood the motion correctly, you're asking to suspend the process. I think I had suggested, and again, I respect your motion in a second that's before us, is to have some examination about what was before us. You've raised a whole another issue that certainly is a relevant one. And I guess one of the aspects to all this is that the current situation that we have is one, and I think it was spoken to very eloquently by a couple of our speakers here this morning, that we have an IG position that, and you know, even with the discussion we've had this morning, is still, we're still in a place of hold here. And I think it's important for, you know, folks that have spoken for others to be able to have access not only to the IG, but for the IG to have access to those records. The changes as are outlined here this morning, again, I've spoken to some of the specifics, but would you know, reinstate that. And I think that's an important aspect of it, you know, and so, again, just to put this off kind of indefinitely leaves folks who were expecting that either investigations of situations have occurred and or for citizen complaints to actually be reviewed beyond him taking them and to actually do those. We're still in limbo on those things. And so I think it's important that we, at some juncture, in the not too distant future, act, you know, with respect to this, because again, I don't think that having that situation in limbo, whatever one feels about the situation and how we got here, that's where we're at. And so again, in order to have I don't have a problem with a workshop. The board has workshops, and certainly invite the community in and to hear from folks more broadly. But I do think that's a consideration, and obviously we all take that seriously. And so that's why I was suggesting that we have some understanding about this. And so I guess I would ask as a part of the motion that we still have this examination of the latest version that's before us. It may not be what we ended set on, but until we get off of dead center here, we are where we are, even with again, some indication that there's, some ability to maybe resolve this at least in part. So again, I would say that to the motion. I don't know if Phil or Patrick, you want to respond, because it's a concern to me. We just say we suspend it. It leaves it, in limbo. We've got, 3 more meetings between now and the end of the year?
I'm willing to entertain a date certain that we come back, so that maybe there's a little more comfort with the term suspend.
Well, maybe we can get to that after everyone speaks. Sure. Mr. Kennedy?
I would just ask for a point of clarification from Supervisor Natoli. What exactly, could you put a fine point on that? What is it that you're looking for?
Well, the workshop was suspend any further work on this.
Suspend action on it.
Huh?
Suspend action on it.
Suspend action on it, okay. Yeah, and which, again, but without a date certain to come back, and what the intent of the workshop would be. I heard what Supervisor Cerna's intent of the workshop would be to explore the lawfulness of locking someone out of the facilities. And again, I think I heard that we had the ability to define that they have access. Now, what changes from what exists now and what could happen in the future, I think that's an important point we ought to understand.
No, I appreciate that. And my thinking is this, is that in that response from council, there was a great deal about options for this board and for this county. Not just, yes, he has the authority to, or no, he doesn't. Okay, so we got a lot back. We got a lot of answer back, a lot of response back from legal counsel in the form of options for this board. In fact, some of the speakers made mention of it, whether it be subpoena, whether it be grand jury involvement. We have not had discussion about that here in these chambers as it relates to the function role of the Inspector General. I think it would be short-sighted of us if not to exhaust that conversation, so that, again, we're not functioning in a vacuum just with regard to the narrowness of a revised scope, one that I, again, can't support for the reasons I've already stated.
Ms. Frost? Turn your microphone on.
Is it on now?
There we go.
So I think this contract that we have today does get us to a better place, to repeat what I said before, but I don't see any harm in working further to make sure we've fleshed out everything, and so maybe we have some more work to do on it, and I'm okay with that too.
Okay. I guess I would say I thought we were going to complete this contract today, but if members of the board think there is not enough clarity in this contract and discussion, that if you want to put it over for a couple of weeks, as long as county council is just clear on what the process is as opposed to a recommendation. So would you please repeat the motion?
Sure. So the motion would be that that we have a date certain to come back, revisit this scope of services, a revised scope of services, and in the interim, that we have a publicly noticed, time-specific, date-specific workshop hearing on the county council's response to the memo. I forgot the date that I drafted the memo in response to my question about the legality of the sheriff locking the IG out of county facilities.
Okay, does the seconder of the motion accept that?
I do. I would only add, if it would be accepted, that we also direct staff to do a more exhaustive research on best practices in other jurisdictions.
I accept that.
Okay. I could ask the county executive and county council how long you need to take to do your work. Pardon me?
3 weeks.
That's enough for you?
It's with the county,
Okay.
county
All right.
council, and that's the work.
Madam Clerk, do you have a date in 3 weeks?
Yes, so I believe that puts us out to December the 4th. Is that right? Okay. Yeah, because our next meeting, it would be too soon for November the 6th. So that puts us out to December the 4th, and we could do that at 11 a.m. We don't have to have a time certain. We can have a date certain and let us work out the logistics on the calendar
timing. I reference time certain only because that's the way we post it. So it's going to have a time. I just don't know.
Correct.
What time it is.
So we can go to December 4th.
Okay. So the motion would be as described and continued to December 4th.
Yeah, so moved.
Please vote.
Unanimous vote.
Next item, please.
Item 48. Item 48, you are acting as the Board of Supervisors in Sacramento County Public Facilities Financing Corporation. Approval of documents for the County of Sacramento 2018 refunding certificates of participation.
Good morning, Kristen.
Good morning. Kristen Yates, Office of the County Executive. So today's item is a request of the board.
Is your mic on, or maybe raise the podium a little bit?
Sure. Thank you. I always forget which button it is. Can you hear me?
Just speak up.
Okay. So today's item, excuse me, is a request of the board and the Public Facilities Financing Corporation to authorize the issuance and sale of the Series 2018 Certificates of Participation to refund the principal outstanding of $46,270,000 in 1997 refunding bonds, $10,430,000 in 2003 public facilities project bonds, $18,390,000 in 2006 certificates, and $36,900,000 in 2007 certificates. Current interest rates will allow the county to achieve a cost savings to the general fund, an aggregate level debt service payment per lease without increasing the number of years of debt service, and the possible achievement of a reduced schedule for debt service by a number of years. The 2018 COPS will be issued as fixed rate obligations with sufficient proceeds to refund the existing certificates of participation included in this refunding, fund a reserve fund, and pay cost of issuance. The refunding will adjust the debt service payment dates to a principal and interest payment in October and an interest payment in April each fiscal year, and if authorized, is not to exceed $125 million in one or more series. The board letter includes an estimated aggregate annual average savings of $19.9 million as of September 21st, and as of this past Friday, that estimated savings is now $19.5 million. Ratings for the 2018 COPS issuance were received from Standard & Poor's and Moody's yesterday, October 29th. The rating from Standard & Poor's is A+, affirming their rate increase in May of 2018. The rating from Moody's is A2, reflecting a one-notch increase in our credit rating from A3. The outlook from both rating agencies is stable. No new money will be issued as part of this issuance, and the assets collateralizing the issuance are the Corner Crime Lab, the data center, and the fleet maintenance buildings. The County Debt Utilization Committee met on October 2nd and unanimously approved the item for movement forward to the board and PFFC. If authorized by the board and the PFFC, the 2018 refunding certificates of participation will be priced the week of November 12th, and we will close the transaction the week of November 26th. So since the board is sitting as both the board and the PFFC today, I would request an individual vote for each recommendation listed in the staff report. So if you have any questions.
Before we go to questions, I want to point out to staff in the audience that we're going to put off the items 50 and 51 until 2 o'clock. Mr. Natoli?
Yeah, because if I could just get some clarification. So on page 2, it talks, very bottom, it says the issuance, next to the last sentence, line, authorize the issuance of the Series 2007 Animal Care Bed Expansion.
So the original 2007...
Should be / bed expansion for juvenile hall, is that what it is? It's,
Yeah,
it's not animal care bed expansion, this all reads as one.
So the original 2007 issuance built the animal care facility as well as 120 bed expansion for juvenile hall.
Okay, but I'm just, the way this reads here is awkward. You see what I'm looking at?
I do.
Yeah, okay. So,
My
but it should
apologies.
be animal care, bed expansion for the.
Correct. My apologies.
And that's okay. And then but I wanted to ask about, because we've run into this, apparently there are some caveats on bonding and so forth, and with regards to the funding that was used for building the animal care facility. I'm going to go to that specifically because we have the nonprofit operated clinic on the grounds there, and that there are some limitations. Does this cement those limitations for a longer period of time? Does it allow us to have more flexibility? Again, nothing that, I'm not anticipating anything, but again, this came up in a meeting a few weeks ago that I had Mr. Gill and some other folks just talking about some of the activities there, and this was specifically referenced as being a limitation on our ability to utilize those facilities, maybe in a more broad manner if we chose to. So could you speak to that?
So the bonds were issued with tax-exempt bonds, and there are post-issuance tax compliance regulations from the IRS regarding the bond issuance and how we use the facility. So originally we covenanted to use the facility by county staff for county purposes. If we allow a private or nonprofit entity to come into the building and use the facility, we get into private use safe harbor issues with the IRS. So in the context of the animal care facility, the spay-neuter clinic is considered 100% private use of the facility. So we have an allowance up to 10%. That use of facility does not get us to the 10%, but it's pretty darn close.
And
so,
this action, I think the question that you were getting at, it does not loosen any of those restrictions. Still tax exempt, still has that.
So they remain, but does this extend it for a longer period of time?
it will not extend it. If we are favorable in the market, we may be able to shorten the length of the debt service by up to 5 years. So rather than animal care having debt service through 38,
yes,
they would have debt service through 33.
And, that again is not a hard number. I mean, 38 is a hard number. We could shorten it. It might not happen.
Well, and again, I was just to say this came out at a later stage after we had gone forward. You know, initially we were going to build this with the tobacco litigation settlement funds and some of the financing there, and then, you know, unbeknownst, let's say to this board member, again, buried in all the documents, was that we were going to have some restriction because of the tax exempt status of the bonds, which has, I think, at a maximum probably inhibited, you know, our flexibility out at the animal shelter. We work with a lot of partners in the community, and again, I want to, you know, to recognize that right up front. And, you know, if we'd have built it under some different financing scheme, we might not have had those restrictions about, you know, how we choose to utilize our facilities. And I just wanted to be clear, because it's come to my attention, certainly after we did that, we used a different source of funding, and that was all well and fine. We got it built, and we built a spay-neuter clinic, you know, based upon support of this board, because that wasn't a staff recommendation at the time. Staff had recommended, not you or anybody here, recommended pulling that out of there. And so it's great that we have it, and I think it's serving a useful purpose. I just want to be clear that we weren't making this any more difficult. It's already difficult enough, and for the next, next 16 to 21 years or 20 years, we'll be living with those conditions. So, okay, thanks. Thank you, Chair.
Does that complete your presentation?
It does.
Okay, now I want to get clear. You want us to have a separate vote on each item 1, 2, and 3?
Please, since you're sitting as two different boards.
Okay, so I'll move item 1 of item 48.
Second.
Please vote.
Mr. Cerna? Oh, didn't realize he was here. And the motion carries. Unanimous vote with those members present.
I'll move item 2. Please vote.
Unanimous vote with those members present.
Item 3, I'll move item 3. Please vote.
Unanimous vote with those members present.
Thank you.
It's a good news item, too.
Yeah, and congratulations on the better bond rating. That's how many years did it take us to get back to that? 7 years. Wow. Good work.
Thanks.
For item 49, you're acting as the Board of Supervisors in Sacramento County Water Agency. This is the public hearing on participation in the statewide Communities Development Authority's statewide community infrastructure program.
Good afternoon, Michael Peterson, Water Resources. Today's item is to seek authorization for the Water Agency to join the statewide Communities Development Authority and participate in the statewide Community Infrastructure Program, the SCIP program. This would provide the opportunity for property owners to finance water agency development impact fees for water and drainage through the pooled statewide bond program that's administered under SCIP. Would provide an opportunity, particularly for smaller development projects, to finance fees when they don't otherwise have a lot of infrastructure credits that could counteract those fees. Today's hearing includes some attached resolutions, so we're asking that the board open the hearing, close it, and approve the attached resolutions.
Okay, I'll open the public hearing. Does anyone wish to speak to this item? Close the public hearing. Comments from the board?
I would move the item.
Okay, before we vote, I would like to, as long as we're hearing from the Water Resources Department, I would like to have you come back and talk to us about why Water Resources cannot repair the roads to good condition when Water Resources goes in, as they are now, with putting water meters in. I'd just like to have the discussion and a decision made on that. Okay. So please vote.
Unanimous vote with those members present.
Okay. We have an off-agenda speaker who's been trying to speak for a couple of meetings. I don't see if he's here. Is David Coda out in the lobby or here? Okay, then we will recess to close session.